All right. Happy Friday. Let's talk about some developer middleware to decentralize the web. Excellent. Well, first things first, thank you all for being here. I'm going to stand here so the light's not in my eye. And as Shinju mentioned, my name is David Snyder. I'm one of the co-founders at Lit Protocol. And what we're going to talk about today is basically three things. One, which is kind of a unique take in terms of how we look at decentralized ledgers in a really generalized way at this project. Then we'll talk about what the service that this protocol provides is. And then I will go through some examples. We won't go through all of them because we don't know all of them. This is a new utility that we are bringing to the ecosystem, a new crypto primitive. And so really excited to have this be very conversational. With that being said, there's going to be a lot of information. I will leave some time for questions at the end. But if something is not clear to you, it's probably not clear to somebody else. So feel free to just stick your hand up in the middle of this presentation, and we can address the question. With that being said, let's get into it. So how do we think about blockchain? So the initial innovation, of course, with this technology was to create a public decentralized ledger, basically to give people sovereignty over their own money. And the ingenious design, of course, was to give everybody who is participating in the ecosystem a key pair, the public-private key pair, commonly known as the wallet, and then have the ledger be public. Now, this, of course, solved the ability to have sovereign money, but we actually took a perspective on this and think that there's some pretty phenomenal kind of what they would call co-benefits of this situation, where we have essentially public metadata. So if you think about like metadata on Facebook or LinkedIn, that is owned by those companies. Now that metadata, the history of interaction, who owns what, is public, and each individual has a way to interact with that metadata because they own a wallet. So at Lit Protocol, we make a decentralized access control protocol. At the high level, functionally, what it is the ability to grant a wallet access to some off-chain resource when that wallet meets certain conditions on-chain, like owning an NFT, being a member of a DAO, having sold an NFT on OpenSea. Really, any on-chain condition can now be used for access control. So this is an open source modal that we have. And basically, this is from an application where we've got Lit Protocol on top of IPFS, where a user can upload a file. And then if you think about like when you upload a file to Google Drive or Dropbox, what they would call the share modal or the share dialog is email-based. In our Web3 world with Lit, this can now be crypto-based. So you could say, I want to share this with somebody who owns meta.eth, or somebody who owns 3 or more CryptoPunks, or somebody who has their address listed in the members array in a given DAO. So just for a bit more detail on that, this is kind of what it looks like. You would select the chain that you want Lit to check against, the specific token, and then how many tokens. And this is one example of an access control condition. This is all feeling good so far? Maybe some nods, some no's? OK, awesome. Now kind of moving in a level deeper in the architecture, what this protocol functionally provides to the user is one of two things. And it's up to the developer who's doing the implementation to decide how they want to structure this. The protocol functionally will check to see if the user meets an access control condition, for example, owning an NFT, and then can provision that user either a key to decrypt some content, some specific payload, or the protocol can generate a network-signed JavaScript web token, which is not a crypto token. This is just like a standard web authorization token. And in that way, bridge blockchain data to other systems, whether it's to Web2 apps, other decentralized networks, et cetera. And so that's the technology that we've got here. But we are not the arbiters of access control, nor do we want to be. We've built this as a decentralized network that has 2 layers of security functionally. One, the network uses something called threshold encryption. So the network has its own public key and private key, but there's no single party that holds the private key of the network. That's stored as key shares across the nodes of the network. And if you're familiar with something like Shamir's secret sharing scheme, that's another example of threshold encryption. And then all of the computation and operations that the nodes are performing is happening inside of a secure execution environment, which is a place where you can do computation on a computer directly in memory, and then that execution environment can essentially attest to the fact that that code has not been tampered with. So even though a node operator is running this code, they can't see the code. They can't get access to whatever that private resource is. Awesome. Let's talk about some examples. So one example that is live today, there's this company called Creaton. They essentially are building like a Patreon-style model entirely on DWeb tech. So there's 2 stakeholders in their ecosystem, creators and fans. And so the way that their system works with Lit and Superfluid as the stack that they use is a given fan subscribes to a creator in the form of streaming payments to them via Superfluid, which is a payment streaming protocol on Ethereum. And then when that fan wants to see that creator's content, which is stored and encrypted on decentralized storage, they sign a message. That message is broadcast out to the nodes of the Lit protocol. Those nodes confirm, is that fan streaming payments to that creator? If yes, they generate that key and in the browser, pass it to the user, and then they can decrypt the content and see what's going on. From the perspective of the user, they don't really realize any of this is happening. They're just clicking, show me the picture, and they sign a message with their wallet, which is a free operation, and then the content is there and decrypted for them. And yeah, and that's an example of where the symmetric encryption key for a specific payload or for a specific resource is used. Another example that in this case uses the JavaScript web token is where, and this is an app that we've got coming out next week, which is being able to create token-gated, DAO-gated Zoom meetings and webinars. And what's happening in this case is there's a Zoom OAuth app, and if you're going to host a meeting, you connect your Zoom account, and you set the access condition. Let's say somebody must own 1 CryptoPunk to access this meeting, and that generates a link. And when somebody else wants to join that meeting, kind of same operation. They click the link, sign a message, Lit proves whether or not they have the ability to meet it. If they do own that CryptoPunk, then the access token is generated for them. That's passed to the Zoom app. Zoom opens. They get to join their friends, hang out, talk about all of the fun CryptoPunk-related things. But this doesn't necessarily just apply to meetings. We've been exploring with a number of really interesting Web 2 companies around all kinds of social interactions. So you can start to imagine anything that people are doing in a collaborative way in Web 2. You can now set that up in like a token or DAO-gated context with this open source technology. Another cool thing that we have been doing is the notion of targeted airdrops. So if you think about the way that airdrops work today, they're generally, hey, first come, first serve. If you have a wallet, come claim this. But by putting an access condition on top of an airdrop, this is an example that we've got coming up. This will be coming out soon, where if somebody follows our account on Twitter, which is something that's happening off-chain, and then holds more than a couple bucks in ETH in that given wallet, they will be able to receive that NFT. And so it's that gating of conditions. So we're working with a few groups, for example, who have up-and-coming play-to-earn games. And what they want to do is they want to give NFTs to people who know the play-to-earn ecosystem and try out their game. So they're setting up conditions such that, like, if you own some Smooth Love Potion, which is the Axie in-game token, and then you come and play the first level of my new game, I'll give you an NFT so that you can, like, move from level 1 to level 5 really quickly, or whatever it might be. So yeah, if you're thinking about how to acquire new users in a blockchain native way, let's definitely talk. This is something that we're really excited about. And yeah, there's a lot of implications here for DAOs as well. We've also got a Google Drive, token-gated Google Drive coming out. Works exactly the same way as the Zoom application. We're also in the midst of exploring an integration with a software called Clarity.so, which is trying to build kind of like the Notion for DAOs. And inside of that, basically what that product is going to look like is a world where, like, if you think about a knowledge management tool, you have different roles: who has read access, who has write access, who has the ability to create tasks, who has the ability to claim tasks. Having all of those provisions be things that are on-chain, whether it's the owners of a multi-sig nominating an individual to be the editor of the knowledge base, or if somebody has more than a given amount of tokens, they can see a certain page, or if they have a certain NFT, they can edit a certain page. So this is all really generalizable, and you can use it for kind of all types of things, and definitely really excited about the implications around DAO tooling and user-owned networks in terms of kind of operationalizing these really exciting but unfortunately slightly disorganized groups today, largely from lack of tooling. So here's some applications that we were gonna launch it next week, but I think we'll wait 2 weeks until after NFT NYC. But yeah, Discord, Google Drive, Zoom, IPFS, and then as you can see, the centralized providers use the JWT example because it's bringing that blockchain data to a Web 2 app. And then in examples where we're talking about open networks, we can have like more private content where that content is like content stored on IPFS that's encrypted, can't be seen by the folks who are hosting it, which is super exciting. But obviously, different scenarios require different use cases and different tools. We've also done a pretty cool thing around unlockable NFTs. So as you all know, an NFT is functionally just like a pointer on chain, right? It's like an arrow that's pointing to the metadata, which is often a JPEG file. But what really hasn't happened yet, and what we're really excited about, is that file that the NFT is pointing to can also be an HTML file. And there's a lot of really interesting creative stuff to do there. So one of the things that we've got is kind of this, we call it our unlockable NFT minter, whereby somebody can come on without code, basically upload kind of the image that everybody can see on the NFT, and then also upload some secret content, whether it's music, video, etc. And it's the same mechanic again. The user has to click unlock to prove that they own the NFT in order to decrypt the secret content that's embedded within the NFT. And we're really excited about this because this kind of, let's see if I have this in here. Yeah, because that doesn't just have to be static imagery. We've got some code that is ready to use today for putting an encrypted React app inside of an NFT. And this kind of radically changes the thinking around NFTs. These NFTs are largely perceived as either like video screens or picture frames. But now with this technology, you can start to think about them as platformless browser windows that you can have their own experience associated with them. So that Genesis Gate NFT I mentioned earlier, the kind of the journey associated with that is for people who get it, and it's free, just claim it on our site. If you own a couple bucks in ETH, there's the ability to join a private Discord channel, and then inside of the NFT, there will be a kind of a collaborative pixel-based canvas art, and really, really excited about this kind of experiment in collaborative creation inside of an NFT. So those are a lot of the examples kind of are around like the creator and end user basis. The other kind of cool thing about this technology and its generalizable notion is how it can be used to connect up disparate systems. So let's say, for example, that you're building a DeFi app on a chain that's not Ethereum nor EVM compatible, but you want to give a higher yield to people who have a high reputation in Ethereum-based DeFi. Basically, you could use this technology to essentially transfer the reputation in a verifiable and decentralized way from one ecosystem to another. So there's plenty of cross-chain bridges in terms of moving tokens, but now we can also move data across chains. And then there's some other really interesting and exciting technologies, like there's things like Ceramic Network that some of you may be familiar with, which allows for dynamic data on top of decentralized storage. And so when you kind of have a stack that consists of lit plus ceramic plus decentralized storage, you can start to build essentially serverless apps where there's no central server. So serverless apps that are encrypted and only the users can decrypt them. So you could imagine a chat between everybody here at ETH Portland based on the fact that we all own that POAP or whatever it might be. And there's no central party hosting that, and nobody else can access that, only us. We're the only ones that can decrypt it because we meet that condition. And super excited about this notion in terms of like, data sovereignty and some of the more like idealistic and exciting things about this space at large. So I know that was a lot of information. We're super excited about access control. I'd say if you take away one thing from this, it's this slide, which is being able to create keys for content, resources, functions when a certain user meets a given condition on chain. But with that, yeah, maybe we could discuss for a few minutes if anybody has, oh, I have one more thing to say, which is, this is something that we like to joke about internally. We kind of like to say that in internet years, the internet is a toddler, and I'll explain what that means. So some of you may be familiar with the notion of object permanence. When like a human baby is 8 months old, they're just starting to figure out that things still exist even when you can't see them. Our kind of claim is that the internet just achieved object permanence in 2009 with Bitcoin, if you catch my drift here. And so this is kind of a fancy way to say that we are still so early and there's a long way ahead. With that being said, let's talk about it. Yeah, so they're Rust nodes, and so they have to basically, like, you can't have them, you can't use, like, we use OVH for them today because you need to have Intel SGX on them, and they're just like running that threshold encryption code. Not currently. So it's like a progressive decentralization. So currently there's a dozen nodes in the network, and so that's a federated network, and basically that's like the big technical work that we're doing is moving towards the permissionless state. So the key that signs the JWT, that's the really cool thing about BLS threshold encryption, is that it's the key shares from the network once they're aggregated are that network signature, which takes the form of the JWT. Right. So how does that work? That part is totally off-chain. We're handling that entirely centrally. But that's the notion of middleware, right? It's a stack. We're building this like one fundamental capacity, and then you can layer it with whatever else you want, right? Like if you wanted to put this and also two-factor to get a text on your phone to unlock something, you totally could. It's a new capacity. You could use it. It's like a la carte, right? You could use it by itself, or you could layer it into a whole bunch of other stuff. Any other questions? Maybe a question.
Yeah, I guess like, are you not concerned that like this tool could re-centralize things and companies could exploit, say, like, giving, turning something that would be free into something that's like inaccessible to whatever demographic they want? And I think that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, so the question was, am I concerned about basically this being used by companies for access control?
Yeah, like make it like yeah, like turn make something more exclusionary than it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like that's up to each individual group, right? Like, is the when you go to the movie theaters and you go to AMC and they have the line where if you like pay the membership, you can like walk to the front and get popcorn earlier. Like, is that exclusionary? Yes. Is somebody paying for that? Yes. So I mean, like, at some level, that's just like the nature of existing in the market economy. But the exciting thing about this to me is that the capacity here is to build all of these systems in a way where there's no central controller and people have sovereignty over their data. So we're kind of like coming in lower level. It's a powerful tool, and then people can use this for whatever they see fit. Yeah. Good. All right. Thanks, everybody.